Hello, very warm welcome back to the Togacast. It has been a little while, things have been getting in the way. So we're basically doing a little series of chatting to various members of the TOGA Motorsport team, drivers, people within the community, and generally just getting to know them a little bit more. We've done some Togcasts already, so we've spoken to Hayden, the owner. We've spoken to Owen, we've spoken to Jardier, that's my claim to fame and I'm sticking to it. And today, I'm very pleased to welcome Mr. George Stevens. Hello.
Hello.
So, George is a member of the community, but also a staff member as well. Is that correct, George?
Yeah, I'm staff member. I've been one for the last 9 or so months.
You were quite, you were in the community quite near the start, is that correct?
I don't know how long the community was basically running for, up until when I joined. I think it was about a year ago in March that I joined this community.
Yeah.
After basically having to find another community after the ACC stuff at one of the other communities that I was with at Vision, so it was no longer going to continue with their GT3 program because they couldn't afford to keep running it, unfortunately.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But that's how I found TOGA basically via SimGrid.
Oh, right, okay.
And then I basically had a look and saw, they do Twitch and YouTube streams. And I was like, that's the sort of thing that I'd like to see, is that exposure, because I was kind of wanting to run my own sim racing team at some point to do endurance events, which didn't pan out, unfortunately, but it's basically how I found TOGA, is through SimGrid and the streams.
A lot of people have kind of discovered through SimGrid, and obviously, as we're speaking at the moment, we are the second biggest community on SimGrid as well. The first for PC ACC specific races, and we do run all the commentary and things like that. So you joined way before I did, because I think it was August last year, August 2023, before I joined, somewhere around about there. So you had been in the community for quite a while before that. Yeah. Have you? When did your sim racing career start? When did you first get into sim racing?
Not necessarily sim racing, but just like computers and racing in general was probably when I was about 4 or was like maybe 6 or 7, something like that.
Wow.
But basically my dad basically had a for the time it was okay-ish. It was basically a very basic PC, and it had basically 2 games on it.
Right.
I liked using, which was the original GTR.
Okay.
And IndyCar series.
Ah, right, okay.
Because my dad is and still is very much into motorsport. So I got most of my motorsport passion from him, basically.
But that's good. It means you share a passion and an interest that you can talk about, or you can, it's something that connects you together, and it obviously has inspired you to evolve into sim racing. And obviously way back then it wasn't called sim racing, it was literally just like, for me it was a PlayStation 1 with TOGA with a controller. There was no finesse, there was no wheels, there was nothing like that. So it wasn't sim racing back then, but it technically was now, people starting off and things like that. So you, in terms of having obviously the passion behind you and picking it up from your dad, where where did it did it start evolving at some point into becoming a bit more serious than just kind of picking up a game and playing it?
Yeah, so I guess the kind of seriousness in terms of sim racing probably started about 3-4 years ago, where
Okay.
I basically started following like people like Jimmy Broadbent and Jardier and all those guys who were basically doing sim racing up on YouTube. So
Mhm.
that was basically, and also I guess at the same time, the revival of GT championships in
Mhm.
Europe
Yep.
at the same time was basically like I wanted to get more involved in
Mhm.
it,
Mhm. Yep.
but I was in basically at the time I was still in school, basically just trying to focus on the exams and making
Yeah.
sure that I actually
You passed
get
them.
those done, all done and sorted, and then I could basically focus on that. And
Mhm.
I didn't get particularly great results
Mhm.
for my exams, so I wasn't able to go into the places that I wanted to.
Sure.
So I basically ended up having to go to college and do my level 1 engineering,
Okay.
because that was pretty much the only viable option that I had with my grades.
Mhm. Mhm.
Even though it was mostly that I failed my English,
Oh God. I
but I managed to get my maths one overturned,
right. Okay.
make it a 5.
Mhm.
I passed my science. At the time that was the only one that I passed was my science.
Okay. I'm not going to tell you what my results were because they were a lot worse than what yours were. But
Yeah.
it's amazing how life can lead you down a path, and then you do find something that either you enjoy or something that pays the bills, whatever it is. From that point of view, what equipment do you have currently? What do you use when you're sim racing?
Oh. I started out with a Thrustmaster TMX.
Okay.
That was basically my first ever wheel that I ever got.
All right. Okay.
I ran with that for about 2 years,
Uh huh.
and then I decided, because I wanted to continue going using ACC.
Mhm.
What I decided to then do was basically upgrade my computer
Mhm.
to the one that I'm currently running with.
Okay.
Now that I didn't have to focus on the graphics, so to speak,
Yeah.
or how many displays I could
Mhm.
potentially run,
Sure.
I then got a Fanatec CSL direct drive.
Nice.
I was quite lucky to actually get mine,
Mhm.
because I ordered it basically like a month before they had the supply issues
Oh,
trying
okay.
to get them.
Yep.
So I managed to get mine about a month, like 2 weeks before the actual like supply chain issues actually hit.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So I got basically that,
Mhm.
and because it was a direct drive wheel
Mhm.
as well, I basically got a wheel stand,
Okay.
which I laid from GT Omega,
Uh huh.
which I then upgraded to the full cockpit version,
Uh huh.
because that basically attaches to the wheel stand.
Yep. Uh huh.
Got a couple of things from, I think it's called Sim Racing Monkeys.
All right. Okay.
Sim Racing Addicts.
Right.
I got that from Sim Racing Addicts. The display HUD
Okay.
and lap timer,
Ah.
along also with a flag indicator as well.
Oh.
So
Right. Okay.
I technically don't need to use the HUD
Uh
at
huh.
all now,
Yep.
because it's all displayed to me
To
exactly
you.
what's going on. But I still run with the HUD,
Mhm.
so it's a little bit easier for whenever I stream on YouTube,
Uh huh.
that people can actually see what's going on.
Exactly. There's a very fine line between being immersive with where you physically are, so you've got all the gadgets, but then when someone's watching and there's no HUD, they're like, I don't know what's going on in the race. So yeah, absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
that sounds an awesome setup. What pedals are you using?
I'm using the Fanatec CSL pedals with low. I got a low cell kit about 4 months ago.
Okay.
And also a throttle damper kit,
right,
as well.
And do you feel those two things have really helped your racing?
Yeah, it's definitely made my driving a little bit more consistent.
Good.
Damper's really useful, particularly for GT3 cars, which have very sensitive throttles.
Yes, and obviously in some of the championships we've seen you driving Porsches, so I mean, they need a lot of right foot finesse rather than just a very heavy foot on and off. I recently bought a throttle damper for my Fanatec pedals, and you are right, it just makes such a difference. And
yeah, it really does.
I always struggled with when you're on the formation lap, you're coming on, you're all set up, and then it comes up to the speed limit. I could never hold near the 70 kilometre limit. I was always up and down, because you didn't have any feel on the throttle. But now the damper kit, you can actually now hold it quite consistently. So that's good. You've really got some setup that a lot of people will be very, very jealous of. What monitors do you run? Do you run one monitor? Have you got an ultra wide, or have you got multiple monitors?
I race on one monitor. I have 2 monitors that are attached to my computer. One of them is basically the one that I initially started racing on.
Sure.
And the other one is a Predator Apex something. I can't remember the numberings of it. There's so many different things. But it's like 25-inch.
Right. Okay.
It's a 25-inch display that I race on, basically.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you use the other screens for when you're streaming and things, where you've got maybe chat or OBS open, or things you need to keep an eye on as a streamer, as well as trying to race and talk and do like 6 other things all at the same time. It can be tricky. So obviously, give your YouTube channel a plug just now, so folk can go and subscribe to you. What is it?
It's Hunter Striker 777.
Awesome. Okay, if you do want to see, and I can vouch George is a good racer, go and give him a subscribe over on YouTube, and go and send him some love that way. So obviously I've mentioned the Porsche. Is the Porsche your go-to car, or do you have other cars that you feel really at home with?
I've started kind of loving the Aston Martin. It's mostly because it's quite stable in ACC, at least. And the Porsche, the Aston Martin, and sometimes the Audi R8.
That's so I've just picked Aston up recently to do the driver swap cup, and you're right, it is a very stable car, but the Porsche and the Audi are very, very different and tricky cars to control. Do you drive the Audi much now with the 1.95? I think we're on the version of ACC.
With now, as of this recording, it's version 1.10.
Oh, right, okay. I'm 5.5.
I don't know why they've decided, rather than going to version 2.0 or something on that, they decided to go backwards.
To 1 again.
1.0.
Exactly, because if you search for version 1...
It's very confusing for people in the future.
It is, absolutely, because if you do search on YouTube for, let's say, something specific like an Aston Martin setup at Imola version 1.9.5, that's fine, but if you search for 1.0, you're going to get like 4-year-old.
I imagine if you search up version 1.10, you probably find like footage from like when ACC first like
Came out.
went public.
Yeah,
Most
absolutely.
likely.
Yeah, you just need to be very careful about how many months or years or whatever, how old the actual video is for it. So, do you have a favourite track or one that you love more than others?
Anything but Misano.
Misano is such a love or hate. It's like a Marmite track. It
is a very Marmite track. I think I've just hated it because I've never been able to like properly set a lap, and it was probably the same way for like Paul Ricard. But I absolutely love Paul Ricard now. Now that I know exactly how to drive it and how to avoid track limits, like 90% of the time, it's become a very much an enjoyable track. But Misano, I just don't like it.
Yeah. I was very much the same with Kyalami. I hated Kyalami purely because I couldn't race on it. And then when I started pushing myself to learn it, I'm like, I actually really like this track. It's a good track. So, I absolutely understand where you're coming from that. Do you have any real life racing that you like to watch? Are you an F1 fan or a British touring car or GT?
Real life racing happens to be something that kind of runs in the family.
All right, okay.
So my grandfather, my great grandfather, it's either my great grandfather or my grandfather. I haven't properly confirmed because there's lots of conflicting information that I found.
Okay.
Unfortunately, when trying to have a look, he basically raced motorcycles on Brands Hatch and other places across Kent.
Right, okay.
Back when Brands Hatch was still pretty much a grass circuit.
Wow, yep.
So after the Second World War, when the track started getting regular events again, he was about when Jim Clark was racing at that circuit at that time.
Wow.
My grandmother basically told a story about how they actually met Jim Clark at one of the races that he was at. There's a photo of basically cups that he supposedly won, but we don't actually have the cups anymore.
Oh, that's a shame.
From what I understand from my grandmother is when he died, they were donated to Brands Hatch.
Oh, okay.
Because it was something like the first cups that were awarded to competitors.
Right,
So they were donated that way, but trying to find out whether or not he actually won like races or not has been a absolute headache. Because we don't know whether he actually won the cups by racing in it or whether he was a mechanic and they gave it to them.
Yeah, and I suppose back then they didn't really have records the way we do nowadays, where everything is documented, everything is, you know, whether it's, you know, filmed or it's things are written down. So, I mean, wow, that would be really interesting to kind of deep dive into to try and find, but I guess it would be quite difficult.
I've struggled like the last like month or so just trying to find any sort of information. The most luck I've had is basically finding maybe one or two like programs from the old days that mention a smart.
Okay, right, yeah, I mean that's a huge, like Jim Clark, you know, that was the building blocks for not just, you know, Formula One and things, but that was building block for a lot of racing. Grew from those initial races. I cannot imagine racing a motorcycle on a grass track. That blows my mind.
They still technically do it today. It's just that they tend to be more dirt tracks.
Right.
Like,
Okay. And I'm assuming
like yeah.
off-road bikes, scrambler kind of, with the big tires with all the kind of the knobbly bits on it as well. It's very technical there, knobbly bits on the tires, but I mean, yeah. And I suppose, is there anyone at Brands Hatch you think it could like shine any light on it, or have a look at documents?
I don't know. Maybe that's probably an avenue that I'll have a look at, is asking some of these clubs, especially some of the clubs that are still around today, do the motorcycle stuff, basically have a look and see if we can find anything on that front. But my dad also got into motorcycle racing.
Okay.
Different side of the family to the motorcycling side of the family. Basically, he basically raced motorcycles with. It was less that he was a racer, but he was more of a mechanic that helped one of his mates basically do motorcycle racing.
Right. Okay.
And he basically, one of the stories that he has is that one of the races at Brands Hatch. Brands Hatch seems to come up a lot with my family. It's been a local racetrack for many, many, many years. But one of the races at Brands Hatch is basically they were basically getting ready for the start of one of the races. It was perfectly like calm sort of day, and it was cloudy, like typical like Brands Hatch, slightly cloudy. But my dad basically took one look at the weather in the distance and said, "That's gonna rain in the next like 5-10 minutes."
All right. Okay.
And he basically said to his mate, let's put on the wet tires." It's like, what? 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 Why are you putting wet? Look, that's gonna chuck it down in like the next 5-10 minutes. His mate goes, "Oh, okay." And all the other competitors around them basically said, "What on earth are they doing?
Yeah.
Putting wet tires on," and everyone else was on dry tires. And the race started, and of course, with wet tires on a dry track, it decided to wear the rubber down. But literally, like 2-3 minutes after the race started, it absolutely chucked it down. So everyone else had to go into the pits to pit for wet tires. With motorbikes, it's not as easy as it is with a 4-wheel car, where you take the wheel nut off. You basically, in order to like change like the rear tires to make them wet, is that you have to take the whole gear assembly and stuff off the wheel so you can actually put this wet tire on. It's why in MotoGP for a very long time they've basically had to have 2 separate bikes, one for dry and one for wet. It wasn't worth having to wait the amount of time where you could lose track position to wait for those tires to be changed. Of course, not with this pretty much local motorcycle series. You couldn't really do that unless you had the money to do so.
Yeah, absolutely.
So his mate basically lapped the field. Basically, he lapped the field and won the race because of that decision that my dad made to put those wet tires on rather than risking it on the wet. And it was one of the only races that they actually won. Because of that. But
local knowledge, and you do have an engineer there, not just to do the engineering, but to sound things off of, and if like you said, everyone's kind of looking, what is going on here? I mean, this guy is crazy. And then, as you say, you need to take
wet tires?
Wet tires on a dry track, and I mean, you need to take the spindle off, as you say. You take the gear assembly off. You need to take the chain off. You need to, it's not a Formula One stop. You know, you're talking easily minutes upon
You're,
minutes.
we're talking probably about at least 2-3 minutes
Yeah.
to change the tyres. If you know how to do it like off the bat, then it should take you roughly about 2-3 minutes
Yep.
to do both sets of tyres.
And I mean, GT cars have got inbuilt rams, so when they plug the air in, the rams jack all 4 tyres off at the same time, so they can all be changed. And Formula One, they've obviously got the trolley that goes underneath at the front and back, lifts it up. But yeah, a motorbike is just not something you want to be changing tyres on a race. Wow, that. Yeah. So obviously, I mean, that runs all the way through your family, you know, on both sides, and you know, things like that. You've got great stories. You've got, obviously, your dad's got great memories about all that kind of thing going on as well. So that's absolutely amazing. Hopefully, you'll be able to find more out about the early years of Brands Hatch at some point. Hopefully somebody will have a key to open that door for you. Just before we go, so are you signed up for any other championships?
I am hoping, well, I initially hope make the first round of the World Tour.
Oh yeah.
But I'm switching back to nights briefly.
Okay.
I haven't found anything out yet whether or not I'll be able to switch over to days permanently.
Okay, right,
I'm just waiting to hear back, but I'm hoping to be at least there for the second round of the World Tour.
Listen, I have really enjoyed talking to you and listening to getting to know you better, George. I've obviously known you for a while, but I certainly didn't know all of that in the background, so really enjoyed it. I can't wait to see you out in the track again. It'll be awesome. I'll make sure Hayden doesn't end up calling you names when something goes on. You know what Hayden's like at times. He comes out with some things. You're like, but no, thank you
Most of the time I'm racing as Hayden's teammate.
Well, yeah. So Sunday. So Sunday is what, the 14th of April. I've had to pull out of the Driver Cup because there was commentary stuff going on. So you're racing with Hayden. Now, our last race, you can't do any worse than our last race at Monza. I loaded the wrong setup. The car was undrivable. Hayden gave me a wrong calculation for fuel, and I ended up almost running out of fuel before the pit window opened. So I had to do 2 pit stops. So you can't do any worse than that, George. You genuinely...
I've done it where I've put 4 or 5 litres in the car
and
not realised till like the start of the formation lap. Because I've loaded in like the qualifying setup, so I've had to go shamefully into the pits to fill up the car with fuel. But the bonus is I don't have to worry about peeing again.
Well, exactly. That's it. It's, you know, and you learn from that. I'm so paranoid about running out of fuel. That what happened last weekend was like my biggest nightmare when it comes to sim racing. I always add more fuel than I need. But Hayden just sounded so confident about it. I'm like, yeah, I'm just going with that. And then I'm like, why have I only got 1 lap of fuel left? And he's like, oh no. So yeah, everything was wrong. So, but thank you very much, George. It's very much appreciated giving up your time to allow us to get to know you. And this will be on Spotify, and it will be on our YouTube podcast as well. So thank you very much for everyone listening. And again, thank you to George, and we'll speak to you soon.